Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. In this video, I kind of just want to do like a part 2 for what is going to be the best spec for Rogue for PvP compared to the video that I did for PvE. Now the PvE video I felt like was a lot more structured. I felt like I needed to show examples, I needed to explain myself because it's PvE. You're talking about dungeons, you're talking about raids where you are looking for the best possible spec. You are trying to find something that is viable. You're trying to find something you can be happy with and somewhere where the damage really does matter. But in this video, I want to talk a bit about PvP. And I've been doing PvP for a while. I've been doing PvP since Mr. Pandaria, and I've played trash specs of rogues, and I've also played that same spec when it was overpowered. So I feel like I have a lot more, I guess, experience with deciding and helping you guys decide which spec of rogue you should play for PvP. This video is going to be a lot more casual. I just have some non-copyrighted vlog music playing right now, so I'm really chilling, and I really want this video to be chill for you guys. So let's talk about the best spec for PvP. If you're looking at straight out numbers, you are probably looking at Subtlety and Outlaw, but Assassination isn't that far behind. Also, when it comes to PvP, having high consistent damage has never been a thing rogues needed to specialize. You only need bursts, you only need moments where you can do damage. You'll need to be able to establish a little bit of pressure on more than one target in order to be viable. You'll need to be able to chain a couple CC like your saps, your blinds and stuns to give you a window to score a kill while popping cooldowns. On top of it, rogues are really good at defense, whether it's evasion, parry, cloak of shadows, vanish, you personally heal with Crimson Vial, whether you go for maybe heal skill like Leech and Poison, Orange Stomach for Outlaw, maybe a second potion if you go for on a talent with Iron Stomach, or Subtlety with Soothe and Darkness. Like, we're squishy, but we're pretty reliable. We have pretty good cooldowns to survive situations, so all three rogue specs are going to be fine on the PvP front for that. When it comes to crowd control, most rogue specs are very similar in terms of what kind of CC they have, and they differentiate in a similar way that they do for PvE. Assassination brings in a silence, and if you talent into Iron Wire, a 6-second silence is pretty damn strong and can be used in a lot of PvP situations, but it all depends of course on a rogue's skill. Subtlety has access to Shadow Dance, so cheap shots for days, you can cheap shot as many enemies. That means also combo point building, that means having a ready burst whenever available and being able to flip around between kidney shots and cheap shots. Outlaw brings a lot of gouges, and that's really about it. But you'll be surprised how strong that ability is. With how much damage Outlaw brings out now, it's not just a CC bot. So with all rogues doing a fair amount of damage, just being able to get yourself a CC combo, you're good to go. On top of it for PvP, Outlaw brings in a ranged stun that also deals damage. Now, it's not quite as potent as other ones in terms of kidney. Like a kidney for 5 combo points, 6-second stun. Outlaw, it does damage, but it's a 5-second stun. That 1 second can make a difference, which might force some Outlaw rogues to play deeper strat, so it's a playstyle you don't enjoy. Then you're looking at other specs, where you have Assassination and Subtlety only needing 5 combo points for a full kidney worth of CC. So you're having to kind of decide and choose what is going to be the best for you. What kind of a playstyle are you thinking of? What kind of a approach do you want for PvP? Since damage is not that important for rogues, and it never has been, like for example Subtlety or WAD, in Season 1 you did like 0 damage sustained, decent burst, not high, decent burst, and great amount of CC, that's all you needed, and so many people played Subtlety and they did just fine. But let's take a look at the damage, let's take a look at which rogue specs deal damage. I feel like all of them are pretty close, they're not that far behind, and there are advantages for one spec or the other, all depending on situation. If it's a single target fight, which spec is the best? Well, Assassination has the heal reduction effect from your poisons, you have damage over time, you have strong sustained DPS, and Vendetta is a massive buff in order to throw down on an enemy. Although I feel like there's been moments where I'm trying to burst someone down like a druid or a warlock and they pop wall and I pop Vendetta. Usually I'm trying to pop Vendetta and then they counter with a wall or a bark skin. I feel like my damage compared to previous expansions is a little bit lower. Like their defensive is actually just shutting down my burst for the most part. I mean, I still get the energy and I can still truck along, but it feels like a pretty decent counter. Where in previous expansions it felt like it didn't matter if you pop a defensive, you're basically melting regardless, unless you have a healer healing you on top of that. So that's going to feel a little bit weird for Assass. And with the fact that we can't use Vendetta quite as often, you might just find yourself just having to be a little bit more careful on using the ability and trying to find somebody without any cooldowns, or using Vendetta knowing that they're going to throw out a defensive so you kind of trading cooldowns back and forth, but you do have other abilities to kind of stack together. So Assassin is fine. It feels a little bit slower than the other specs, but it always has because of the damage over time ability. The advantage to Assassination though is if you can get a fat, meaty Garrote damage with Subterfuge and suffocating trait for your gear, that can do so much damage. Your Garrote can be literally top DPS, and if you can spread it to multiple enemies with advantage Garrote when you're trying to go for big pressure, Assassination has potential with gear to just melt the whole team. Subtlety, single target, very good. Always gonna be good, always has been good. I feel like Subtlety would be awesome if we were to bring it back from like Warlords or Miss Pandaria, because I do kind of miss the old school Amber spam, but the current Subtlety still does good damage. Of course, gear is going to be a huge effect for you. Like for example, in PvE, haste is the best stat, but in PvP, you're gonna want to look at crit, mastery, and versatility. So you're gonna have to gear yourself differently depending what you do in a fight. So if you're somebody who's just in a PvP type of Subtlety rogue, you're obviously going to have good burst damage. Your sustain damage is also pretty decent, but your burst damage kind of just outweighs any kind of sustain that you would do, but it doesn't mean it's not completely there. Like you can go for Gloomblade and basically recreate a Subtlety spec of Legion. Although with the traits that you have, I don't think it's worth. Some of the traits you got really do enforce you to play the bursty playstyle, and it just works. It's currently performing really well. There's nothing that can be said about it that's bad. It plays very similar to how I did in Legion, so I can't really tag in more compared to like Assassination, and it has a few more abilities to play with, except maybe DeathSec can be an interesting burst ability, although I haven't seen a lot of people use it for PvP quite yet. And then we have Outlaw, and Outlaw just slams damage. It's pretty easy playstyle, a lot of it is auto attacks, but the cleave is where Outlaw slams. So the cleave for Blade Flurry, it just makes any single target ability also deal 45% damage to anybody around you. With Acrobatic Reach, you get like 8 yards of area around you, so in BGs and in arenas, you can just cleave people. Hitting somebody for 100% of the damage, hitting everybody else around for 45% of the damage, I mean, it puts a lot of pressure if enemies get close. So some people might have to figure out with Outlaw to spread away so you're not taking extra damage, which I feel like makes Outlaw a lot deadlier, but it makes it a lot more viable. They also brought back abilities like Sinister Strike, the renamed Run Through to Dispatch, and they changed the damage output. A lot of it is auto attacks, a lot of it is Sinister Strikes, a lot of it is dispatches, and they all hit hard no matter what buff you have, which makes Outlaw a lot more consistent and plays a lot like combat rogues of back in the day, minus the whole buff mechanic. You know, red buff, yellow buff, green buff, anything like that, but instead you have Roll the Bones as your buffs. So that is a lot less intrusive. It plays very easy, very simple. You can basically play it like roll buffs and you can go. I mean, sometimes you will want to, if you have downtime of, okay, I don't have a setup for the next 10 seconds, I can just spend comp points re-rolling buffs. Maybe you'll get the buff that you like, so it makes your setup a lot stronger. But even if you don't, you still have abilities like Sinister Strike, auto attacks, and dispatches that hit. So I guess the question comes down to you guys, what do you think is going to be the best spec? I feel like all three specs of Rogue in a right composition for arenas, even for rated battlegrounds, and even just in BGs are all in really good position. Each spec has a talent, or maybe a trait, or maybe an ability that makes them viable, like the shorter blinds for Outlaw, the 6-second silences for Assassination, or simply the CC capabilities of Subtlety. I'm probably going to continue playing Outlaw because it's been my favorite spec, and it's awesome seeing it perform as well as it does. I really like the combination of Combat Rogue and Outlaw Rogue weaved together, but I do like Assassin, I do like Subtlety, so I love swapping between all three specs for battlegrounds. And I might even do some of those for maybe skirms. Maybe if I level another rogue like the one on EU, I'll probably keep my US rogue and Outlaw main and make my EU rogue like a Subtlety or Assassination main, just because there's so much potential. There's also possibilities for Azeroth traits to become viable, like triple stacking certain traits, and we haven't even got to try all of those. So I'll probably be making videos of me stacking certain traits whenever I have them available. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and as always guys, I'll see all of you in the next one.